And we're live. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Welcome to the Hebrew Woman channel. I am your host, Renaissance Woman, aka Ren Judah. And I'm here with Zell, my co-host. Zell, what's up?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. So today I wanted to do something a little bit different. And I know everybody knows we're on this leadership journey. We're doing a leadership workshop. And right now we're on the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. But I wanted to take some time to reflect on some of the things that I've been learning along the way, because I really you did not want us to just breeze through these things, because I do think once you start reading these books, and if you're anything like me, I'm a serial book reader. So I'm not just reading and listening to the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. I'm looking at and reading other things. And as a matter of fact, I've just recently come across Robert Greene's book, War. And I think it is something that I'd like to see us discuss on here as well, because I do think it's an interesting perspective, and particularly when he mentions about women and how we view war and just people in general, how we talk about it in terms of everyday society. Now, before we get into all that, though, I have to
Mhm.
say, everybody know this is the time of year where we celebrate the feast of ingathering, and the purpose of us keeping this is, and just read here, this is a 7-day festival commemorating God's provision for the Israelites during their 40 years wandering the wilderness. So this is a time we take out for prayer, reflection, and it is a time of feasting. And a lot of people have probably just came off of, like us, atonement. And so we keep these holy days because there are those days that are commanded in the Bible that we keep, and the men to go up and present themselves to the priest. And it's not one of the obligatory ones, but we do celebrate. And I'm always, I love the Feast of Ingathering because it's always in the fall, and it's a time where we could just think about the benefits that we've reaped here in this wilderness. Because I think we're wandering, we're braving in the Brene Brown vein of things. We're braving a wilderness here within America, within itself, right? Dealing with
Mm.
these different challenges in this society and on these jobs. And when you take on a leadership role, I think you really start to look at things differently. And especially if you care, right? I
Yeah.
think whether it's with your children, and I think the whole conversation needs to be reshaped for women in terms of thinking about their roles in leadership and their roles as leaders, because I think so many people do not see themselves as leaders because you don't have a title. And a title does not make you a leader. There are a lot of people around here with titles, and leaders they are not.
Hmm.
So let's get right into it. As always, we go through our slides because I always like to explain the purpose of this channel. The purpose of this channel is for us to explore our biblical principles and to examine ourselves. 2 Corinthians 13:5. Examine yourselves. Know ye not your own selves, whether you be of the faith. Prove your own selves. Know ye not your own selves, that Christ is in you, except ye be reprobates. So I am always trying to examine myself, but also, as Zell and I were discussing the other day about the process of examining yourselves, whether ye be in the faith, no, prove your own selves. The proving of your own self is just for you to examine yourself and see what is going on with you, and being honest about it, and just taking that time to reflect and see what changes you need to make. And I've had to be honest with myself that a lot of times I am not showing up. And I will say, particularly as of late, Zell, I really come into the realization that I don't like the way I've been showing up. Like I'm just
Mm.
all over the place. It's just like, and I found myself in a state of constant complaining about
Mm.
situation. And I realized that, first of all, complaining is not going to solve it. Nothing, I've been complaining. And I realized, and it didn't dawn on me until I looked at how much time has gone by, and it'll be a year in November since that whole incident kicked off for me. And I'm
Wow.
still fighting. And I just like, at some point it has to stop and you have
Yeah.
to move on. And so now I'm in a space and I'm really grateful for the leadership programs that I've been enrolled in. And because they're really making me examine myself in a way that, I thought we were doing here on the channel, but just I think the combination of all these things, the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, the
Mm-hmm.
21 indispensable laws of leadership, the leadership classes that I'm enrolled in, it's all culminated into me looking at how I show up. And I think a lot of times we don't think about how we show up in spaces, in workplaces, with friends or family, because we often think that we have it. We know what we're doing. And in knowing what
Mm-hmm.
you're doing, you do not want to receive correction. You don't want anybody telling you what to do. And and I had just mentioned to you earlier that it made me think of Sarai and Hagar. Now it says, now Sarai, him no children, and she had a handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. Now this is in Genesis chapter 16. And Sarai said unto Abraham, behold, now the Lord hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go unto my maid. It may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abraham hearkened unto the voice of Sarai. And Sarai, Abraham's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, after Abraham dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abraham to be his wife. And he went unto Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. And Sarai said unto Abraham, may wrong be upon thee. I have given thee my maid into thy bosom. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. The Lord judge between me and thee. But Abraham said unto Sarai, behold, thy maid is in thy hand. Do to her as it pleases thee. And when Sarai dealt with her, she fled from her face. And the angel of the Lord found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way of Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarai's maid, whence comest thou? And whither wilt thou go? And she said, I flee from the face of my mistress, Sarai. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, return to thy mistress and submit thyself under her hands. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, and it shall not be numbered for a multitude. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, behold, thou art with child, and thou shalt bear a son, and his name is Ishmael, because the Lord has heard thy affliction. Now listen, for me, if you think about that, there are a couple things going on here. Number
Mm-hmm.
one, Sarai couldn't conceive, so she chose this maid because obviously at the time, this tells you that she and this woman had a relationship. And
Mm-hmm.
she felt comfortable enough to give her to her husband to wife. And you know how we do. Once we get a little position, she became a second wife and she conceived. She was able to give Abram something that Sarai was not able to do. And she became despised in her eyes. She's like, yeah, B, yeah, I got the baby now. What you got?
Mm-hmm.
And so Sarai was like, she went to Abram and she was like, hey, may the Lord judge between me and thee. But this is some bull. Basically, is what she told him. And he told her, do what you need to do. See, sometimes we get in a position where we get so high and mighty and we think we have something. We talk about people getting titles. And when they get titles, they become entitled. And they think that nobody can tell them anything. I'm the boss. I'm no, you cannot correct me. Who gonna check me, boo? Right?
Yeah.
And so this had me thinking about just like my own self and like to check my own self, like where am I showing up like that? Because if you are working for someone else,
Mm-hmm.
there is a chain of command. If you are running your own business, there's levels to that.
Mm-hmm.
And you may find yourself in Sarai's place where your subordinates aren't listening to you. And a lot of times they're not listening to you because people will exemplify your behavior. The people who are under your tutelage, under your leadership, your children, your work, your team, they will show up just like you show up. If you're chaotic and disorderly, they will be
Mm.
chaotic and disorderly. If you cannot take reprimand or correction, they will show up and not be able to take reprimand and correction. And so it's an odd dichotomy because it's really hard
Yeah.
because we don't we it made me think of Iana Van Zant in the book In the Meantime when she said
Mm-hmm.
that black women suffer from can't be wrong disease. Well, I think that's really a people trait, period, because who wants to be wrong? And a lot of people go to great lengths to not be wrong. A lot of people will lie to be right. We all know people like that who
Yeah.
they'll lie about if the sun is shining. You need to go check. You might need an umbrella. And so what the point was for me to think about, well, am I showing up in some places rebellious? Am I showing up where I can't receive correction and instruction? And if I am, what is the remedy for that? So that I can receive when the angel told her to go submit herself to her mistress, she was given a directive. And that if you
Mm-hmm.
do this, I will multiply your seed. You won't even be able to count the number of blessings that you are going to receive. But I need you to go submit yourself because first of all, pocket. And I see in out here today, and this is not me chastising anybody because I've been out of pocket, right? I think we have
Mm.
all found ourselves in positions to where we are out of pocket. And we want to argue and have conversations about submission because we don't like
Mm.
that word. We don't like the word submission because we don't want anybody telling us what to do.
Uh,
Go
and
ahead.
see, and see that because I definitely I will say I have my issues with the word submission, and it's usually it has more to do with when I have a conversation with people, the way that it has been. I don't want to say taught to me, but expressed to me. The problem I have with submission is, let's say there's me and then there's another person, and I have to submit to the other person. Um, the question in my mind always becomes if I do what this other person, because the whole idea is I disagree with what this other person wants me to do. I disagree 100% with what they want me to do. I think there's a problem, it's wrong, it's unreasonable, there's something wrong with what they want me to do, in my opinion. So the concept of submission says I got to do what they want me to do anyway. And in my mind, the question becomes if that goes bad, then what?
So I think there are levels to that because it is just like when you have a job, when you are given it, everybody's seen the movie A Few Good Men.
Yeah.
There are lines to that, just like within that movie. You know, if somebody's asking you to do something immoral, unethical, and
Mm-hmm.
unreasonable, right? You have to have
Mm-hmm.
levels. Nobody's telling you to blindly carry out orders, and I think A Few Good Men is a great example of that, right? So when we
Right.
start, I think a lot of times when people are having these conversations about submission, we always want to go to the extremes because the fact of the matter is we don't want to be under anybody's authority.
And
And
see, then even if we don't, I think to me, even if we don't go to the extremes with things, then the next question becomes if whatever and I think because I've had my issues because if when something usually goes wrong, when there's a decision that's made and it has gone bad, I'm usually the one that's paying the price.
I think
So
that
that's the
happens
thing.
everywhere. It happens at work though,
And
right?
so,
But if you're
well,
well, let me say this. If your company
mm,
decides to go in a way that you don't agree with
yeah.
and they make a mistake, it does impact the whole organization. But you're
Yeah,
not
but
you're not flat out refusing.
right, but and that's my whole thing. What I'm thinking about is it's easy to play with house money. Is what it is the thing that comes into my mind. It's easy to say, well, hey, I don't want you to do X, Y, Z. But if I go along, if I'm trusting this other person to make a certain decision, and they're the who I'm deferring to, and then it goes bad, normally for me, it always leaves me in a bind, and I'm the one that's screwed up. And my credit is the credit that's going bad because I'm listening to what somebody else has said.
Well,
And
so this
so,
is, are we talking about blindly following again? We go back to a
we'll
few good
see.
men. All right,
But
so
see,
like to me that's an extreme because if like we know what we believe here. If my husband all of a sudden comes in here with a whole hog saying we're gonna roast it, am I gonna go ahead and eat? Absolutely not.
but see
So we
that
do have
then
to.
But see, then when we talk about other things, then if we take out that type of stuff, I don't ever run into any situations where where I really have to go against anything. Then, if like for instance, if I'm at work, let's say, and there's something that there's a an owner, or what we call them the owners, like the county or the facility that we're working for. If there's something and they want to their system to work a certain way, then the way I see it is their system. And so, am I going to, in that way, would I say I'm submitting, if we want to use that word? I'm just building the system that they want to have. And
So
I'm
let's talk
okay with
about it.
that.
What's submission? Submission is the act of yielding to authority or control, presenting something for consideration, or the state of being submissive. So if you are yielding to their desires, we just don't. And I again, we have to get into talking about words we don't like the meaning of. Zell, I don't want nobody telling me what to do. Like I'm just gonna keep it a being. I want to do what I want to do. And I don't
If
want to
it's
be told
not,
no.
but see, and for me though, if it's not my stuff, I don't mind. If I'm helping you with, if I'm at your house
Mm.
and I'm helping you paint a room, and this is the way you want your room painted, I have zero problem painting the room. If you say, well, no, I want you to paint the top first and then the bottom, or I want you to paint the corners first, or
Mhm.
I want to paint the ceiling first, I'm
But
going to
but
do
but see, no,
exactly,
you
I
have
have
to
a
bring
zero
it back.
problem with that.
You're not like see, you want to go off on these other tangents, and I want you to come right back here
Okay.
because where Hagar and Sarai
Mm-hmm.
are concerned, that is a
Yeah.
domestic situation.
Yeah.
Abraham put Hagar in Sarai's hands
Yeah.
and he told her, do what you deem is best. And she did
Yeah.
deal with her harshly, so she fled. They
Because
saw
Hagar was in the wrong.
exactly she was out of pocket. And so what did the angel told her? Go back and submit to your mistress. And so let's just be honest. There are a lot of times you have been out of pocket and you don't want to be corrected. I have been out of pocket and I don't want to be corrected. And I'm just think like we just don't want to tell the truth about it, and I don't know why because it's
I'm
just
trying
real.
to
Like,
think of a
but let me just
situation.
tell you, don't tread on me. This is baked into the American ethos. It is part of our ideology to rebel. We're a lot of times we're rebels without a cause. We're revolting and we don't even know why. And the reason why I'm bringing this up because I think it's relevant to Second Corinthians 13 and 5 to examine yourselves whether ye be of the faith and prove your own selves because we're not talking about extreme situations where your spouse, because if we're going to go, because let's be honest, there's a chain of command. And in the Bible, it clearly lays out the chain of command. It says that Christ is the head of man and man is the head of woman, right?
Right.
Now, again, we're going to go back to the few good men reference, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is this man ordering you to do something immoral, unethical, unlawful? If those are not taking place, we have to ask a couple of questions that can make you uncomfortable. And this is why women have to especially be careful now because we choose our own partners, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
responsible for our choices. And so, have I chosen headship that is unwise, that is foolish, and that is going to bring harm and calamity to my house? Or am I putting myself in a position to, who are we surrounding ourselves with? We talk about where is our Proverbs 11 and 14, where no counsel is, the people fall, but in a multitude of counselors there is safety. Proverbs 19 and 20, hear counsel and receive instruction that thou may be wise in thy latter end. And so then we have to start talking about the responsibility of the older women. And
Mm-hmm.
this is where I feel like our conversations come in. Let's go again. Proverbs 28 and 26. He that
Mm-hmm.
walketh in his own heart is a fool, but he that walketh wisely shall be delivered. And so, how do we walk wisely? We have a multitude of counselors because there is safety. And one of the things that was talked about in the leadership group that I was in was who is on your personal board of directors. And that's what I want to talk about here.
Mm.
Because I think far too many women have put themselves in a position to where you are out here and you don't have wise counsel. You have put yourself in the hands of a bunch of other foolish women as well because you don't do what First John 4 and 1 says, beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits whether they are of God, because many false prophets are gone out into the world. And not just false prophets, there are false friends, fake friends. Look at Shanquilla Robinson. Because somebody told her, one of them people told her, and I've seen this on here as well, because somebody tells you and you get money, they feel like you owe them money. But damn, she took you on a trip. She was footing the bill for
Mm.
all the food. And that still wasn't good enough. You felt entitled to something that she was able to get based on her own merit. She had to qualify for that. Now I know there are
Mm.
people out there scamming, but she actually had a legitimate business. And her friends killed her.
Mm.
I want to
Mm.
talk about
Mm.
the fact that not only are we not vetting our leadership, we're not in vetting our spouses and vetting our friends. I can say
Mm.
what I just think passed this last year, and that's why I wanted to have this conversation. And I'm going with the submission thing because we are talking about on the other channel navigating the toxic work environment.
Mm.
When you're in a toxic work environment, more than likely it is because the leadership is flawed.
Right.
And so, where do you draw the line between submitting to the authority of the leader that is facilitating and curating the toxic workspace? And when do you take a stand? And what should that stand look like? In your
Right.
house, where do you draw the line between following the leadership and the headship of your husband? And when do you fight or draw a line? Do you know when to set a boundary? And what does that boundary look like? And if you don't know, where are you getting wise counsel to help you navigate those decisions? And it can't be from somebody that does not believe in Torah. And this channel is for people who believe in the Bible. We believe in the Bible here from the beginning to the end. So if that's not what you do, the Hebrew Woman Show is not for you. Okay. So I wanted to talk about that with you, Zell, because in all this talk about leadership, we haven't really delved into followership.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that look like? And how far does it go?
Exactly. And that, I think that's where and see, that's why when a lot of the things that I'm talking about, they sound like extremes because I'm thinking about um, how things have been and things that I've dealt with and what was an extreme situation that I got myself into. And then should I have ended that but I actually stayed in it? What was right? What was wrong? Where's the line there? And it is something that is extremely, extremely tricky. And I think that's why so many people have issues with the concept of submission because it's going to look so different for everybody. just like every man's leadership is going to be very, very different.
Because
Um,
I honestly say
yeah.
I think I've done the same thing. I am trying to do it the way that I was told it was supposed to be done. I made bad decisions and choices, and then became gun shy. And it's just like, I don't want to listen. No, nobody's going to tell me what to do because I've been taking care of myself and I'm doing it on my own. And I don't want to put my hands in myself in somebody else's mercy. There's nothing worse than giving your all to someone and finding yourself in a situation like, let's just say, a situation where you become unemployed and the person who's still employed in the house starts treating you like trash.
Hmm.
Or and so I get that these type of situations come up because I mean I've been hearing stories of people giving their spouses allowances, or you
Yeah.
have to borrow money from your spouse. People are in
Hmm.
those type of situations, and that's not to shame anyone because sometimes life happens, and I don't like how women tend to beat up on other women who have found themselves in these types of situations. I think the whole purpose is that as older women, when we see these situations, we can kind of give notice, or we can say, this is how I handled that. But if you have submitted to this person and you have put yourself in this person's hands, if there's no abuse, if there's no violence, if there's just you feel like Hagar felt when she fled from Sarai, he dealt with me harshly. I ain't like the way he checked me, but I was out of pocket. I think those are two different issues, and we have to be
Yeah.
honest. A lot of times, because again, I think it's just baked into the American pie. Rebellion.
And see my thing with a lot of that goes back to, you really have to talk to somebody to find
You do.
out, okay, how bad is this? Because if you're on the verge of self harm, if you feel like you're losing your mind, if you I mean, how are you just upset? Where are you
Yeah,
with whatever's going on? You really got to gauge, am I just mad,
yeah,
or is there some serious manipulation or abuse happening right now? What exactly? And that's usually the kind of stuff where I think sometimes you don't always know where that line is. It can be fuzzy, especially because for me, I was in my last marriage. I was very young. There was not a lot that I understood, and I went into it just very, very naive, very
hmm,
open-hearted, free, and
yep,
everything. I was very agreeable, and it was like I ended up being very manipulated,
yeah,
and I didn't
and I
know I didn't know any better, and so I ended up getting really burned quite a bit because of that. But then the question becomes, is that the way it should have been?
but let me point this out too. Now, if you think about that, because I think I haven't been through a similar experience myself. When I think back and I really reflect on it, I didn't just get burnt in a relationship with a man. I got burnt in relationships with
Mm-hmm.
women, with
Yeah.
jobs.
Yeah.
Because when you're green, and this is why it is important for the
Mm-hmm.
older women to be giving wise counsel to younger women, because we don't know what we don't know. And when you have to get out here and learn these lessons the hard way, a lot of people either grow or they become exceedingly bitter. And the bitter part of it does not yield you any fruitful results. Who wants to eat bitter fruit? And so you run around bitter and you wonder why you keep getting these results, but there's only a certain type of person that will be attracted to toxic fruit. And these are people who are equally toxic. And so trying to navigate that space is honestly going to start with self reflection. It is going to start with 2 Corinthians 13 and 5. You're going to have to examine yourself. And when you examine yourself, it is something that is going to be extremely uncomfortable. And when we talk about whether you be in the faith, there are a lot of people, and I've done it myself. when I was a Christian, I did not understand or know that I was not actually even being a Christian. Why? Because I wasn't even reading my Bible. I would go to Bible study just like everybody else and get those little pamphlets that they give you, and then they'll tell you, go to your Bible and read this verse, and then come back and you read from the pamphlet. You notice how they never want you to actually keep reading the Bible. They just want you to follow those pamphlets. Those pamphlets are a means of controlling you and the narrative. Because one thing about reading the actual scriptures is the radicalization that comes from it. And I'm talking about the freedom of understanding who you are and your place in the kingdom and your role as a servant. And part of that is understanding your choices in spouses, friends, who you should be around, and even in the workspace. We take it back to the workspace. There are certain people on your job, and this is why we're going to go into that book, War. These people are your enemies. They're your spiritual enemies. You are not evenly yoked. So when you go to work, when we talk about your coworkers and not your friends, your job is to be professional, to do your job, and to leave that job where it is. You're supposed to come out from amongst them. And when you're able to create your own spaces of employment, that's great when you can do that. But if not, I love the way you describe your boundaries at work. Can you talk about that a little bit about setting boundaries at work, Zell?
Now, boundaries as far as what is concerned, because
Dealing with
I
coworkers.
do. Now, my main thing is they are not my friends, and to be friendly but not familiar. They are not my friends. These are coworkers, and so there are things that we do, we don't do. We can be nice, we can chit chat, but we keep it on a coworker um, level, and it's just that. And so that means things like going to each other's houses, spending time and hanging out. I don't do the spending time and hanging out away from work. Now, granted, I
Mhm,
work with all men, so that would be weird for me. So it's
mhm.
not something I would do. But it is strictly a work during work hours thing, and it's also I don't want to talk about. We will have some basic conversations, but I'm not going to get real personal with my coworkers like that. And I know some people
Yeah,
have done that, and almost every time I've known the situation, it just does not end well.
it
There's
doesn't. It
always these problems.
backfires. Well, if information that you have shown, shared, gets personalized and weaponized when a person gets angry with you, because inevitably, just like in any relationship, at work, these are relationships. These are professional relationships. And in most relationships, they're going to be, we're human, there's going to be some level of different disagreement. And
Mm.
most people now, because we're dealing with people that are so childish, um, they don't know how to, we don't have effective conflict resolution skills. And so what happens is they're mad at you and now they're telling everybody your business at the office. Don't share your personal business at work. Period. And it's tempting because I always say that the workspace gives the impression of an illusion of inclusion. And I was like, this is your work family. You don't have a work family. These people, unless they are literally your blood relatives, you do not have a work family. You all are together on a common cause. The only reason why some of these people you're even associated with is because you work in the same place. These are people who you would not have even sought out a friendship with had it not been for the fact that you are in the same place. These are people who you wouldn't even talk to if you ran into them at a party.
There are people, and I have to say this about coworkers. I have seen there. I've been out, and I've seen someone away from work, and they don't even seem like the same people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, is this so and so? I mean, just to see them away from work with their family or with their friends, their kids, or see where they live and see how they move. And it's like, this is a whole nother person.
You
And
know, one of my
it's weird.
coworkers said this to me, and I thought it was so weird. He was like, "I have a work persona, and I have a personal persona, and the person that you see at work is not the person I am at home, and I do not mix the two. He was very
Hmm.
specific, and we were given a scenario of our if the job place was a movie or TV show, what would you call it? And I said that I would say this is Game of Thrones, and I said, so if it's Game of Thrones, what character are you? And he told me he was Littlefinger.
Mm.
And so for me, that was very telling. And so, Littlefinger was very duplicitous and conniving and backstabbing and always waiting for an opportunity to be a usurper. So I think that when people, it goes to when people show you who they are. I also think when they tell you who they are, believe them. And I had a encounter with a coworker who got angry at me and quit speaking to me, and we resolved the issue. And then when another issue came up, got angry and quit speaking to me. And it just showed me that a lot of times, if you just allow things to play out, people will show you who they are. And when they do, instead of just constantly going back over and over again, that is, I don't do the like for when people stop speaking to me, I don't do the tit for tat. You're not speaking to me. I'm professional. If I see you, I say good morning.
Mm.
And if something comes at work, I will talk to you as if nothing has happened. Because for me, I'm able to compartmentalize it because I feel like nothing has happened. Because I really do not believe that these people are my friends. If I
Hmm.
leave this job tomorrow, I'm unlikely to ever speak to any of you again. And I think we're just not honest about that. I
Yep.
worked at a place for over 22 years. And when I left, I do not have a relationship with any of those people. We trust me because I still, pass them, and we chit chat, or if somebody passes, they'll call me and like that, but we're not friends. We
You
never were
know, it's funny you say that because there was a woman that recently retired, and she retired actually almost a year, in December was a year that she retired, and she came back to visit maybe a month or so ago. And this is a woman that I worked with for about 28 years. And she came back to visit everybody, the people that are still there, that they're still there when she was here. And it's weird because it was almost like, what are you doing here?
and
Why are
that's
you
stuff like
here?
the people that, why are you here? What do you want? You,
And
you
then
want something?
what was even sadder is I literally had nothing to say to her. We had nothing to talk about other than, oh, nice to see you. How's everything? You doing okay? But I mean, we had no conversation for each other. And it was kind of weird. She's like, oh, I'm just stopping by, and I thought, wow.
Because when you think about it, if I'm perfectly honest, a lot of times the conversations, when I think about the conversations that I have with my coworkers, what are they about? They're about work.
Yeah.
And if
Yep.
we're not talking about work, we really, maybe in general, something to come up about food or some, off topic that's very light and not really anything, a superficial
Mm-hmm.
conversation. But I'm not sharing because I don't go in depth about my family with them. Some of them
Yep.
don't even know if I have siblings or not. They don't know if my parents are living or not. They don't know anything about my personal
Exactly.
life. Now, if
Exactly.
I
They
go to a
don't.
funeral, they may find out. But other than that, I don't share my life with them. They're not my people.
Nope.
And
You're
especially because
100% right.
it's still a newer job for me. A lot of those people I don't know, and I never really established a relationship with them because, like, within those 2 years, I got promoted. And when you become promoted, especially in a place over people who have been there long term, it does tend to build some resentment and
Mm.
anger. And so, but it's not an issue. It was never an issue for me because there was always a separation anyway. And I think if people really think about it, most of the people who get promoted, they're most of the time people who aren't buddy buddy with everybody because
Mm.
they're removed enough to where people taking it personal has no effect on you. So the people who were angry about me getting promotions, it had no impact on me because they didn't talk to me in the first place.
Very true. It
So
makes me
I,
think. That gives me something to think about. Why did I get promoted and over other people? Or, it's like, why me? How did I end up in this? And it's interesting because my boss specifically told me, he was like, you are literally the only one that has been able to stay above all of the drama and the fray that's down there. He's like, and I mean,
yeah.
this is in a building full of, I mean, you've been able to stay above the fray, stay out
I
of the
wish I could
mess.
say the same for me because unfortunately I got
Yeah,
embroiled in unwittingly to me. I didn't even realize all these things were going on, and so I'm caught up by
yeah,
default. But I do think that when you find yourself in a situation where you are in a toxic work environment and you're caught up in controversy by default, I think one of the best things you can do is to remain separate. And
yeah.
it's important that you keep that wall, that there is a hedge around you, that you have boundaries. Because one thing I did realize is that when people, because like you were saying, don't be too familiar, because familiarity breeds contempt. When you're always accessible, when you're always available, you're always doing, people start to take you for granted.
They do.
People start to get really comfortable and think that they can start talking to you. And this is something that I recently experienced, that, oh, I let this person get too familiar with me because now they seem to be comfortable speaking to me in a way that is not acceptable.
Hmm.
So now what I do when that happens, I remove my presence. You will only see me in passing. You will
Yep,
only hear from me when we're discussing business. I give you, in when it comes to work, you got one time.
yep. I mean, it is unfortunate because I never thought I'd have to really create that separation. Because I remember when I first got promoted, I had not moved into an office.
Mhm.
And originally, I really wasn't, it wasn't a big deal to me. I was like, yeah, whatever. And then there were a few things that happened, and I realized, you know what, maybe I do. I think I need, because I'm out here in a cubicle with everybody else, and they're not realizing I'm not, I'm not you.
Yeah.
There's a separation here. There's something different about what's required of me.
And I
And
will
I
say
was
this
like,
to
yeah,
anybody while we're talking about these leadership things, to Zell's point, it's hard because a lot of times, especially if you are a person who like to laugh and kick it at work, you will soon discover that you have to have a separation between you and staff because they cannot
hmm,
treat you like you are one of the guys. You are
yeah,
not like them. And one of the ways that you will really know it is when the time comes, and ultimately you will cross that bridge where you have to enforce some policy.
hmm,
And then you're going to really learn where the loyalty lies. People are going to protect themselves, and if that means in their eyes protecting themselves from you, you're no longer cool because when you're one of them now. You're one of management.
hmm.
You're not like us anymore. You can't just come in here and kick it. And I think I had that issue too, where I just thought it was just hey, we're all just coworkers. We're all just working here. It's not a big deal, but it is for them. And if you don't set a boundary, you are not going to get the respect that you need in order to do your job.
That, and that is very, very true. When you think it's not, because I did the same thing. When you think it's not really a big deal, it is
It's
a
a big
much bigger deal than you realize. And that is
deal.
something that I'm continuing to learn every day.
Me too. And that's why I want to talk about this, because I was like, I don't want to just come on here like for this leadership journey. This is not about sitting up here pontificating and telling people what they should and shouldn't do. This is me sharing like a year of experience leading a team. And at one point in this year, within this year, I ended up leading two teams. Learned the hard way that is something I should not have been doing. So I spent a year managing two teams instead of one. And I feel like, because I felt like I had something to prove, I had to prove to people who were saying that I did not deserve to be where I was or I did not belong. I felt the need to prove that I could handle it. And at the end of the day, the realization, you cannot care more than your employer does. You cannot care about the company, the policy, the rules more than they do. You can do what's right, you can do your job, you can do the right thing, but just understand you cannot overly invest yourself. And that's something within this year that I've learned the hard way, that I'm overly invested and I've put too much energy towards their stuff instead of mine because there's no reciprocity. And some people will say, well, your check, that's reciprocity. No, because if I just work for my check, it will be literally the 8 hours and I'm gone. But me, I was being a Buzz Lightyear blank. I was going to infinity and beyond. Anita Baker, giving them the best that I got. And they don't care. And so that's a
Yep.
hard realization to come into too when you work somewhere and you realize that it's hard. And so to make the transition into still being ethical, keeping your morals, and doing your job because you made an agreement. You agreed to do your job. You didn't agree to go to infinity and beyond. So it's about setting boundaries because one thing these jobs will show you while you're going to infinity and beyond, I literally watched a woman work from sun up to sundown, writing policy, doing all this overtime, only to get kicked in the arse in the end over nothing. They are not dedicated to you. They are not loyal to you. So do your job and just keep it that simple. That would be my advice.
Mm-hmm.
But do your job well because always remember that everything that you're doing, this is your name. Your name is attached to what you're producing. Even if they don't care. I'm not telling you don't get sloppy. And I'm saying always do your best. But you don't have to go to infinity and beyond for things and people who don't deserve it. Zell,
Exactly. And that is the very reason that I had to learn how to leave work at work. Don't bring that mental burden home with me.
yeah.
Because when I changed positions, the responsibility changed, and that stress changed, and I had to learn how to leave it there and not worry about it when I got home.
I found that I was volunteering for things. I volunteered and created a newsletter. I volunteered and oh, I'm going to edit this manual because it's out of order, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to volunteer and do that. And it's not appreciated. As a matter of fact, it's weaponized or thrown in my face. And I was like, why am I doing this? So I hate to say this, but I will not be volunteering and doing anything. I'm going to do what is required of me. And the rest, I'm going to actually start because I realized that I don't even have a personal life. I am not doing the things that I enjoy for me. Like, I don't go to my knitting group, I haven't started my book club. And I just realized that I'm just giving, like on the YouTube side of the game, you just give yourself away, and you give yourself away, and you give and you give and you give, and there's no reciprocity. So I I just gotta stop, you know? There are limits to all of this. There is wanting to grow, and I do, and I will always try to grow and keep moving forward. But I will say so overall, my point is what I've learned in reflection as we do the feast of tabernacles here, and you kind of wrap up the end. So this is a harvest time. I want to talk about the fruits that I've reaped in this season, and it was learning that I'm doing too much for people and things that don't deserve it. And I would also say you can't care more than your employer does. I would say those are the lessons that I've learned over this last year. And another lesson I would say I learned this year was that you cannot assume that people are going to do the right thing and that people have ethics. I think that, as a matter of fact, it would be in your benefit to assume otherwise until they show you different. My husband always says, try the spirit, because that's what the Bible says. He says, we go back right here to John. Whoops, did I pass it up? Yeah, there it is. 1 John 4:1. Beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits whether they are of God, because many false prophets are gone out to the world. There are people who are going to show up and they're going to pretend and they're going to present professional fronts and images. They're going to pretend that they care about whatever it is you're doing. And really, they're just wolves in sheep's clothing. And so one of the things, again, another thing that I've learned is to stop fighting everything. Every battle is not mine. And he says the battle is his, right? I'm learning that I need to pick and choose my battles more carefully, because I'm one of those people, when you try to do wrong, what I feel is wrong to me, I'm going to fight, I'm going to resist. And I've just had to learn that every battle is not worth fighting. As a matter of fact, some battles are worth losing so you can win the greater war. You know what I mean, Zell?
I absolutely know what you mean. I think that I was thinking about when you were mentioning that, I was thinking about what I have learned. And one of the things that I have learned to practice is very similar to what you have, and that is to just let stuff go. Not to be so, I can't do everything. Focus on
Yeah.
what it is I'm supposed to do that thing well. And this other stuff that I feel like other people should be doing that they might not be doing,
Yeah.
not my concern.
Yep.
Just,
If it's not my lane, if it's not my job, like I was one of those people.
yep,
If they're not doing this right over here, oh my God, somebody, I gotta go sound the alarm. But
yep.
nobody else is concerned. These people literally don't care. I'm like, I'm caring more than the employer does. This is so unhealthy,
Hmm. That's
So
exactly what I did.
yeah, let
And I
let
had to
go.
let it go like Elsa, baby.
Yeah.
I had to let it go. And because I was really out, and then once I did that, my stress levels really started to come down. I was able to really just say, you know what? That's their department. That and I even had a conversation with my boss about that. I had to,
Mhm.
because he was like, well, why are you, and I told him, I said I had to. It's their department. If there was an issue with somebody in their department, I talked to them about it. I didn't get all into all. I just said, hey, this is what's happening. You might need to deal with this, and I leave it alone. Same thing with the other one. If they had some problem, I'm not over there trying to figure their issue out. Mm-mm. Let them know what's going on, and let them. They'll figure it out. Go on back to my department and deal with the issues. We got plenty enough stuff in our department to have to deal with without me going and trying to run around and manage everybody else's department for them. Because is happening is if you do too much of that, then they will put that stuff on you. They will
Yep.
put their problems on you, and then they'll sit around and say, "Well, so and so, Zell told me to do this, and
Yeah.
Zell was the one that did," and then all of a sudden I'm dealing with all these issues that were never mine to begin with, and
Exactly.
not
Giving
even getting my work done because I'm fooling with
yeah,
that.
because you want to be the responsible one. We're not going to be responsible for things
Hmm.
and issues and people and just setting those boundaries and learning when to say nay, right? Matthews 5:37. But let your communication be yay, yay, nay, nay. For whatsoever more of these cometh evil. And I think we end up getting into all types of confusion and chaos because we just didn't have the ability to say no because we were people pleasing.
Hmm.
Genesis 4:7 says, if thou doest well, he was telling Abel, the guy was telling Abel, if thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted? And if thou not do well, sin lieth at the door. And that's what happens when you don't. So that I'm not on here telling you this is not a stream about for you to be pessimism. This is about acceptance. This is a stream about acceptance and just accepting what is within the locus of your control. And I had a tendency to run around and try to be accountable for things that were not my business. And I see Natasha down
So
there. She says,
true.
let other people do their own work. Absolutely. Stop being a busybody, meddle around in other people's affairs. So shalom to you. And shalom to O'Shea Lennox, who was passing through. And she says, yes, let their jobs, they don't care about us or our case. So, and that's a great thing. Another thing for Natasha saying there is I would jump in and want to save the day and, oh, I can do it. Oh, I'll fix it. And I'm like, why am I volunteering to do this? Because they see it's messed up. They're not trying to fix it. So why am I? And then only for them to come back and try to weaponize it.
Mm-hmm.
Girl. So where we go round robin to, what does submission look like in the workplace? What does it look like at home? And we
Ooh.
don't like the word submission, but let's just say, what do you want to call it? Compliance, agreement, being agreeable.
I would say I think it's more along the lines of being agreeable
But that's
in
what
my personal
submission
opinion.
is, though. It
No,
is
let's see, and to me, it's not necessarily. To me, being agreeable is you don't just argue about every random little thing.
submission is the act
Submission
of
means you
yielding
do
to
what you're told.
authority.
Period.
Submission is the act of yielding to authority or control, presenting something for consideration or a state of being submissive. Let's see if we can go even further into it. Let's see. The action or fact of accepting or yielding to a superior force or will of authority of another person. So, if, to say we don't like the word submission, we would have to say we don't like the word leader because somebody is in authority and you're going to yield to that authority, or you're not. Are you going to rebel?
And I think that if I'm honest with myself, I think that it has more to do with the negative connotations that submission have as relates to slavery, in my personal opinion. Because, when you start, because to me, I do tend to relate submission to slavery.
Yeah, we're not
And that's
slaves.
not what that is. That's
No,
not what most people are talking about when they're talking about submission. And I
because we're not
think that's
slaves. and,
right.
and we're and we're not and but as a leader, like, and this is why I was talking about getting a talking about words we're uncomfortable with. Your staff submits to your authority.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you say that to women in leadership, they will have no problem. Now, some will, because again, people don't like that word submission. But if the definition is to yield to the authority,
Mm-hmm.
now let's talk about it. Are you yielding to your boss's authority?
At work, absolutely, yeah. I have no
And
problem with that.
so, however, but we have employees who do have a problem with yielding. And we have
Mm.
we have to deal with personality types who are difficult, they're argumentative, they're disruptive. And sometimes I think what that shows up like, sometimes it can be um, a byproduct of your behavior, or it's either a byproduct of your behavior or your unwillingness to lead. And so that's what we're going to talk about next week, too.
Mm.
Being put in a position of authority and being unwilling to fill that role. Whether you're a parent and you're doing this free range raising of your children, free range rearing of children is insane. You know,
Oh yeah.
yeah, they want to have free range workspaces. You have bosses who are incapable and unwilling to lead. And so this is another thing that fosters toxic work environments, because your boss might be a people pleaser. And if your boss is a people pleaser, that is going to create a problem for you, particularly if
Mm-hmm.
you are in a supervisory position.
Mm.
In your house, if you are unwilling, now this is where some women gonna get mad. If you are unwilling to submit to your husband's authority, do you think your children are gonna submit to yours? And let's just take it a step further. If you are unwilling to submit to your husband's authority, how are you going to convince me that you're submitting to Christ or God's? Because he said, obey your husband as you would the Lord. Now we unpack that. So
And
I'll leave that
see,
for you. Go ahead.
okay. I was going to say, to me, it says a lot more about the relationship you have with your husband, in my opinion. I think when we start talking about the idea of non-compliance, not submitting, not cooperating, never yielding, then the question becomes, what's missing in that relationship?
And we're going to have to go back to 2 Corinthians 13:5, and you're going to have to examine yourself in a relationship,
Yeah.
because are you evenly yoked? Did you get, because let's wake this up. A lot of people are in relationships for survival needs, for survival
Mm.
issues. You don't even like this person, let alone love them, but you needed help paying your bills. You could have just got a roommate. And you could have just skipped all that additional stuff. If you married
Mm.
a fool, what do you do? So I think that'll be an interesting conversation to talk to, because there's a place in the Bible when David was out in the wilderness, and he ran into, I can't think of her name, but Nabor's wife, and
Mm.
she told him to pay tribute to David, and he didn't. Well, he ended up dying, and she ended up married to David because she was willing to comply with his authority. So there are really some interesting stories in the Bible that can teach a lot of different lessons. And I do think that the Most High does have a way of punishing a wicked man too. So, that's something, we'll have to talk about. But I don't know. Let's see what they say in the comments. If you tell us your opinion, tell us what you think, send us an email. As always, you can message us at sister7@gmail.com and let us know what you think about the topic. And who knows, maybe we'll have a panel and we have a conversation about what does modern day submission look like at home, at work, at play, because you're submitting to the law, you're submitting to workplace rules and regulations, but hopefully, most importantly of all, you're submitting to Torah. And if you are submitting to Torah, are you following the chain of command? Zell, what do you think about that chain of command in Torah?
Mm.
We'll have to have that conversation. I think
Oh,
sometimes
yeah.
where we're having this conversation about leadership, I just wanted to, because we're already been on here an hour, I'm going to wrap it up. And I hope you all are enjoying your feast days. But I did want us to just have that conversation so we can start thinking about it, because I would love for you ladies to give me your feedback. And let's have a real conversation about submission, and not these ridiculous conversations I see playing out on social media about submission. It is about examining yourself and knowing your own self, and knowing if you are of the faith. And if you be of the faith, then there is a chain of command. And I have had to really examine myself lately, Zell, and check myself. And it's like, am I really in order? And I have
Mm.
to look at myself and see, on some things, I've been out of order.
Mm.
And I cannot say I'm not in a bad relationship. My husband is the best thing that happened to me. And I'm going to say something else that might get y'all ticked up, and let's talk about it though. But the Bible says two are better than one for a reason. Because,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, some women are financially savvy and they're able to get it together on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some men who are not financially savvy. And their
Mm-hmm.
wife is the one who handles the finances. Two are better than one, because somebody is
Mm-hmm.
always going to be stronger in another area, right? In my case,
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you the quality of my life improved with my husband. Not only did he push me to get out of a dead end job and push me to know that I could do more and move further, he's still pushing and encouraging me to go further. And I can go. So really too, when you're in a relationship, you're supposed to make each other better. Are you bringing out the best in your spouse? Are they bringing out the best in you? And if there's somebody that you don't respect and you can't listen to, we're going to have to go to 2 Corinthians 13:5 and examine ourselves and why. If you are in a position where you are in a relationship and you cannot follow the chain of command that the Most High has written in this book, stop lying to yourself, examine yourself, and stop telling yourself that you believe in the Bible, because you don't. Because you don't even respect the chain of command. He told you what the order was. I'll leave it on that note. Shalom, everybody.